Subscribe to Fantha Tracks Radio on iTunes, SoundCloud, or wherever you can find great podcasts. Star Wars in a single file. And now, get ready for Fantha Tracks Radio's The Fantha from Down Under. G'day mate, how you going? This is Adam O'Brien, and I'm the Fantha from Down Under, bringing you Star Wars news in a single file from Australia. We're going to give you all the Star Wars news, Star Wars reviews and more, coming all the way from Queensland's Cantina on the Gold Coast of Australia. So join me as we chat Star Wars. Welcome to the show, how you going? This is Adam O'Brien, and tonight I have a special treat for you. Coming to us all the way from the United States, the one, the only, Star Wars author and fan as well of the franchise, Adam Bray. Adam joins us, as he did in May, to chat about some of the work he's been doing with both Star Wars and the Marvel Universe, but tonight we're going to really be delving into quite a bit about collecting, Star Wars itself, and just, I suppose, some of the hard things it is to be now a collector when I think it's a little bit harder to get a lot of different material, whether it be some of the releases we're getting from Hasbro or even some of the more high-end stuff like Sideshow Collectible. We're going to be chatting about that. We're also going to be chatting about something that news broke in between getting this podcast organised. And, of course, from StarWars.com, we found out about a brand new TV show coming along the lines. But so, all with the author Adam Bray. Hope you enjoy the episode. We start the episode chatting about what it's like to do the current work with Marvel, and of course, some of the research needed to build around the mythology of the Marvel Universe. I hope you enjoy. Here we go. As I think you mentioned in the last podcast, you got the chance to really research some myths and legends and stuff like that, particularly with, I suppose, Thor's saga. And bring that into, and that must have been interesting to go back and look at, I suppose, myth and legend from, I suppose, our world into the Marvel world.
Right, yeah. It was, I really enjoyed that part the most, actually. Looking at, Thor, I researched a bit about Norse mythology, because it's told the Norse aspect of Asgard and Thor. It's kind of superficial in the movies. In the comics they go into it a lot more because the Thor's been around for many years. There's probably thousands of Thor comics. But in the movies, it's mostly visual. They don't go in and name things. So I'd like look up what they actually call the royal palace and Odin's throne and drawing a blank on the character, but the observatory at the end of the Rainbow Bridge there. And I brought in all the old Norse mythological names for things. Like the Yggdrasil, the world tree, that is a symbol of, all the 9 realms of Asgard and their connection with the bridge. There's actually a lot of there's a lot of elements to that symbol. You see quick glimpses of it in the very first Captain America when Red Skull goes into that old church, and it's there on the wall. But there's creatures. There's a deer, and there's like a little squirrel and some other things, and those are all actually elements of the actual Norse mythology. So I got to bring some of those things in subtle ways to the book and talk about them. Some of it got cut, unfortunately, just in the editing process, moving images around and things. But a lot of it remains. So that was fun. And I brought that in all over, on all the Thor pages whenever there was an opportunity. Same thing, all the World War II stuff, Captain America and Hydra. I'd research all those old World War II costumes, the military gear that they're wearing, and the guns and things, and search old military surplus websites, and websites of collectors to figure out what all the different uniforms were, and the parts of the uniform, and the insignias, and all the pieces to the guns, and just diagram that out and fill all the real world accurate information. It was surprising as I was doing that just how many guns there are too. It was a funny thing, in our cultural climate here, where we've got a lot of issues with guns and violence. So I worried, I'm doing all this research. Are they still going to keep it all in here? But I was glad, it's in the movies, and so it all remained. I'm glad, they owned it, and it's shown in an appropriate light. It doesn't violence isn't glorified. These people are portrayed as villains, that are misusing these things. So that was all fine, but it was interesting, just from a research perspective. Spending things on time researching, African culture for Black Panther, and the African shields and the spears and things. Just diagramming and providing supplemental information. There was just I would end up going down rabbit trails where I could spend an hour or two just to find a little detail that interested me. But that was the fun of it. In all these projects, I always like to learn stuff, and I like to provide something new for the readers, and make sure that each book is going to be a discovery process for the fans, that there will be something unique to it.
Definitely. I love that DK have done that for years. Obviously, you've done that with Star Wars, with some amazing work as well. But I think Marvel now sort of venturing to that you can get that same great thing, whether it's Easter eggs that you didn't know about, or some of the comic book history, or, like you say, real-world points. And one of the great things about Marvel is that it is, like Star Wars, it's a mythology to itself. But I think what makes it so prevalent for people is that it is basically our world, whereas Star Wars is set in a galaxy far, far away, even though it's still relatable. I think that's why Marvel, being such I suppose, still a mythology about superheroes or heroes in any way, is so relatable, and people really clicked straight away with it. And let's face it, unlike DC, they have got a formula that works. It's a shame, because I love DC comics, always have. I love both Marvel and DC equally, but they just haven't found that formula when it comes to their motion pictures and stuff like that, I think.
Right. Yeah, and it was fun, the real world aspect to it, because like when I was writing about some of the scenes in Doctor Strange, he's when he goes looking for Kamartaj in Nepal, he's visiting actual temples around Kathmandu and around the valley there. He's going to actual locations, so I could kind of put my travel guide writer hat on like I used to do, and talk about those actual places that he visited. So that was fun. But another a weird thing about the real world elements was product placement, because that's not something I've dealt with Star Wars, because it's all fantasy, and in some ways in Star Wars, everything is a product. Everything is a potential action figure or toy or a costume or T-shirt or something. Everything is something Lucasfilm and Disney could sell. But it's also it's not found it doesn't originate in the real world. But in Marvel, I realized, gosh, especially in certain movies, there's a ton of product placement for advertising. And, Doctor Strange's watch was a big one. Quicksilver's Nike sneakers, or maybe I think they're Nike, not Reeboks. Tony Stark's cars, Black Panther's cars, all the bottles of wine that Tony Stark is drinking. There's tons of stuff. There's cell phones. There's probably some fashion too, though I found the fashion rather challenging. I made a lot of effort to actually find what the products were. And I would include them in the books. We weren't sure whether Marvel would approve that or not, because the product placement can be a sticky thing. But some of it made it through to the end of the book. Some of it didn't. But it was an interesting exercise for me to look all that stuff up.
It's interesting too. I mean, product placement's always been something that you have in pop culture. I mean, one of the great ones, I suppose, is Wayne's World, when they're actually taking the Mickey out of it with Pizza Hut or whatever it was. Oh
yeah.
Or was it Back to the Future with Pepsi? I mean, he goes back in time and asks for a Pepsi or a Tab. Was it? I think it was Tab, the old Tab soft drink. And yeah. That's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right. Yeah, you can't have a tab without buying something, kid. The fact there was a tab on the bar. So I think it's intrinsic to what pop culture is. Marvel's a big one because it's set in our world, which is just brilliant. And one of the things we were talking off air just before we came on was, of course, the state of collecting. And one of the things I wanted to say about collecting is interesting. In the United States, obviously, there's been some price drops with some figures. And I saw a similar thing back in the 1980s. It would have been about probably 85, 86 when, at the height of its reign, Masters of the Universe started actually jumping on the shelves out in Australia. I think we'd had it out for about a year and a half, 2 years. And the prices were sky high. In the 1980s out here, there was a recession on. It's very hard for, for young families. Home loan rates were sky high through the roof. It was the worst time financially to be in Australia because it's still, I think, today the highest taxed country in the world. It really is.
Sure.
But at the same time, they used to have what they flea markets, which they have pretty much everywhere all across, I suppose, other countries too. But these flea markets were different. They didn't just do clothing, food, and apparel. They also did pop culture. So what they would do is they'd go, right, what's the next thing Mattel had? And at the time, Mattel obviously were getting to a point where they were just about to put out, I think, the Masters Universe film. But it wasn't going to. Well, it was at a point where, look, we need to put out this movie. And they were doing it with Canon Pictures, which is not exactly a film company known for big budget movies. They were the B grade ones, I think.
Right.
But anyway, so we went to the flea market, and I remember my mum saying, did you like He-Man? I said, yeah, He-Man's pretty cool, I suppose, yeah. And the entire line was sitting on a bench, vehicles included and everything, for only $80 Australian back then, which would be the equivalent of about probably maybe $190 now, so under $200. Grayskull, we got the Battle Cat, anyway, all that stuff. But it was sort of a jump from 6 months before where everything, I mean, that would have been probably about $500, maybe $400 worth back then at its peak.
Right.
But isn't it funny how price dropped like that, with developers and stuff?
Yeah, it is. Star Wars action figures, for a long time, they weren't worth much. And you could pick up the whole line, at a garage sale or pawn shops or things. But now they've skyrocketed, some of those figures that, my parents or grandparents got me for $2 or $3, can be, $100, $200, $300. So yeah, the prices are crazy. I made the mistake of selling my collection when I went off to college, and since I've begun writing for Star Wars, I've been trying to buy back just the Kenner action figures, but I'm still missing the last couple. I think I need a Poncho Luke, and I always mix the pilots up. I need the green one. And then just a few little weapons and things. Oh, and the EV-99, which is that droid. It was made kind of in a flimsy way, so I guess the arms had a tendency to break off. So it's really difficult to buy a figure that hasn't been broken, let alone a affordable one. So yeah, I'm still looking around on eBay for those. I rarely see them at conventions. So hopefully I'll finish that off.
Pretty hard to find a lot of that stuff. I mean, out here in Australia, one of the biggest ones is trying to find the vehicles that Kenner produced. The Holy Grail is the Falcon, obviously, and a good copy of the Falcon. But one of the ones I've seen around out here in Australia was the Y-Wing, which I always thought was one of the better ones that they produced. Although you can't find one that's complete, you'll find one without the canopy or one that's missing a leg, or the tail section. But is it as hard sort over there too, like some of the vehicles from the Kenner line?
Yeah, I don't often see the vehicles at big conventions. It's funny. In my experience, it's the little local conventions are much better for the Kenner Star Wars figures. That's where I see more variety in the figures and more vehicles. There's certain ones you'll see like Jabba the Hutt and the Wampas and Tauntauns, and once in a while you'll see an AT-AT or those little. There were a couple of play sets that Kenner made that they would change the color and reissue it. So I had one that was it was Tatooine with a little cave and the little pod that C-3PO and R2 escaped on, and then a cardboard Jawa sandcrawler. I had that as a kid. But then I think they reissued it. They turned it white and they made it Hoth, and they might have issued it a third time. And then there was a droid factory that was made to look like something that Jawas would use, and then something that for Jabba's palace. So you'll see those kinds of things, but without the figures, because the figures that came with those sets were some of the valuable ones. But yeah, I'll see some of those things. So I've picked up a few small things along the way. I forget what they call them, outrig vehicles, just the little ones that didn't actually appear in the movie, but Kenner wanted to make something that was affordable.
Mini rigs, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, mini rigs, yeah, that's it. Yeah, so I have picked up a few of those. Because they're still cheap and they're small, but I've told myself I'm not allowed to buy ships because I just don't have any space to put them anywhere. But I miss having them. When I was little, I had a Millennium Falcon and AT-AT, the Rebel troop transport. A bunch of the play sets. I never had any of the Death Star sets. That was kind of my holy grail. I had Dagobah, some Hoth stuff, but I had a pretty good set as a kid, and all in relatively good condition.
Wow, that's awesome. The one I also tried to find, which I think I got one set, but it wasn't one of the big play sets. So it was I think they're the Micro series. I don't know if they were called Micro Machines back then, but it was,
oh yeah,
they were just fantastic. I mean, you had the Bespin playset. I remember a friend of mine had the 3 connecting sets that you could have, so Luke could literally go from one end to the other, to the sort of that inner core of Bespin. But what my parents got me, it was usually on an Easter. Like we'd finish primary school that season, and then go to holidays. We'd always go up the coast to a place called Caloundra, and they would surprise us with stuff. Whether it was, all right, you did well. Here's your grades. You did great on your grades. Here's something Kenner. And what they got me was, I think for the first two, was the X-Wing and the Snowspeeder, the ones that had battle damage. And so I got all the vehicles that they had, but as soon as those came out here in Australia, they sold out straight away, and they're very hard to find.
Yeah, I never had any of the micro sets. My brother had those, though he wasn't really into Star Wars, at least not as much as I was. So he didn't appreciate them as much as I would have. But it's been fun, actually. I think we've finally weeded through everything. But for a couple of summers, I was finding stuff in my parents' attic and basement, old boxes of shared toys, just all mixed together, and going through. And even though I had sold my primary collection in these mixed boxes belonging to my brother and I would find little cast off accessories mixed in, little blasters and backpacks and capes and lightsabers and a couple of stray action figures, Jawas and Rebel Troopers and stuff. So it was cool to actually be able to find a couple of baggies worth of random toys and accessories that I can kind of still have that psychic connection to from my childhood, because even though I've gone through and tried to rebuy some of the action figures, they're still not my action figures that I played with. So it's just like there's not quite that same connection. It's somebody else's toys. So there's something special about finding all those things, mixed up in boxes. And I found my G.I. Joe. I still have my G.I. Joe collection and some of my Transformers, and those are cool, but they weren't my primary interest. It was Star Wars. So even though I found the G.I. Joe, which some people would love, I have a rather large collection.
Oh, wow.
I was excited because I could go through the G.I. Joe looking for Star Wars accessories that might be mixed in.
Oh, you're going to love a dear friend of mine over at my other home, which is Phantom Podcast Network. His name's Davis Grayson. And Davis is a bit of a modelling genius when it comes to the ships and vehicles, but his primary interest is G.I. Joe and the universe that and Transformers go together. But what he does is he will take those vehicles and with acrylic dry brush, he'll actually do this sort of stuff, I suppose like ILM used to do, and make that sort of battle scarring and damage to it. And then he goes and photographs it out in a natural setting, like whether it's at a park or something like that, and it's just gorgeous. I'll send you a link. It's some of the most amazing stuff.
Oh yeah,
brilliant, absolutely.
Yeah,
brilliant.
I'd love to see it.
He loves it.
It's been a little. Finding some of my old toys is cool. It's a little disheartening sometimes to see some of the wear that age does to them, even just sitting in a box. Mine are not too bad, but what I found with the G.I. Joe figures, their torsos and their legs were held together by rubber bands inside. And anything that was open to the air, the rubber bands just disintegrated. So you've got all these parts of figures, a whole big container of, 100 figures, legs and arms and torsos and things. So those have to be repaired. And I found that we lived in Florida for a while, and I had some of these boxes of things in an outbuilding. But we had farm animals, which means we had rats on the property. And so I found some toys where the rats had gone inside and made nests and pooped all over everything. So that has to all be scrubbed down and disinfected where that happened. But that's what happens with age.
It does. I've got a funny story. You'll like this. Years ago, I as I mentioned off air, I'm a pretty big Robotech fan outside of Star Wars as well. Robotech's a big part of my growing up. As kids used to watch it every morning. And one of the things, I collected some of the figures. And I remember years ago losing pretty much the little box I had with the Rick Hunters, the Zentradi and stuff like
Oh.
that. And I'm like, oh my God, that stuff would be worth so much. And anyway, I went all over eBay, and there's a different group of sites out here which you can go to and have a look. We've got Zing Pop Culture out here, which sometimes has deals on some of those older ones if they pop up. But as luck would have it, I was about to buy a Zentradi Chiron through a private dealer for around about $200 Australian. And I got a call from my father, my stepdad, and he said, "Hey Adam, you might want to come over. We found a box under the house, and I don't think you've seen this box for about 35 years." And I'm like, oh my God, they found it.
Oh, wow.
So over there is this little fella, Chiron, which free of charge, because I already bought it when I was, 6 years old or whatever, in perfect nick, and even shows that Matchbox stuffed up by putting the same arms on both sides, left and right. You can even see the joint stuff up there where it goes backwards.
Oh, wow.
Look at that. But reasonably good condition. However, I packed it up when we must have moved house once, and I mean, even the condition on the back and everything, all the joints moving great. And anyway, so my stepdad, he said, I didn't realise you collected this sort of stuff. I was going to bin it all. I said, oh, no, don't do that. And then I found my old Kenner collection in there. It was only about 4 or 5 figures, but my original Luke was in there.
Oh, that's great.
Unbelievable.
That's great to find that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like finding a time capsule almost, because it's going back to that time.
Yeah.
And wow, like, did these really exist in that time, And you compare that to the sort of high-end stuff that I collect now, and, mate, that's even better than that. I mean, I would compare that to even my other pride and joy, which is the Mad Max stuff, which I'm absolutely in love with. But this sort of stuff, you compare it to, I mean, I'd give over that any day for some of that earlier line, because at the end of the day, it's like you say, it's the nostalgia you have with it personally.
Right, yeah. I'd still love it if one day, somebody will tag me on Twitter or Facebook or something, and say, that they found, something of mine. Because, I know I wrote my name, Adam or AB or Adam Bray on a couple of things. And, I sold them down in Florida. It could have been Brian's Toys. I think they're down there. They're one of the big toy retailers. It might have been them. And it was somebody in Orlando, but I haven't given up hope that someday somebody will say, "Hey, I found your Millennium Falcon or your Jabba the Hutt or something. Do you want it back?" That'd be really great.
Wouldn't that be something? I mean, now obviously Star Wars. We've just had an announcement today, which I just saw waking up this morning. We're getting a Cassian Andor spy thriller series, which I actually think is fantastic. I'm hoping we get K2SO in there as well, hopefully.
Oh, I hadn't even heard about that. I guess I haven't been on social media much today. So is that on the Disney streaming service?
I'm guessing this is, going to be that part of the Star Wars content that they're going to be putting on the streaming service, which... I mean, brilliant. I couldn't think of a better idea for it. I mean, we got The Mandalorian, fair enough, which will show us post-Jedi, but this is even more exciting to me because there's a character who you didn't expect in Rogue One who, does away with, like anything that gets in the way of his mission. That's unlike any other character. It really is. He's your Jason Bourne, basically, in Star Wars. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Right. Well, that's interesting because during the making of Solo, there was a rumor that, what's his name? I can't remember the actor, that he'd been seen on set. So the assumption was that he would have a cameo in Solo. But obviously he didn't. So... and Lucasfilm hasn't publicized that he visited like they do when George Lucas or various ones do. So, I wonder if there's some kind of tie-in or that they were just, discussing the show or something. I guess we'll probably find out eventually. But so that's very interesting. I think that'd be that'd be an exciting show. It might explain why, because he would have been a good character for a comic book series.
Oh, definitely.
Might explain why we only got one comic book from Marvel, one prequel comic book for the character. Probably after that they decided, hey, don't touch this. we've got plans for him. I know that happens a lot. That's why you don't see comics for or novels for certain characters, because they're either planning something soon or they just want to keep it unfettered, so that maybe in the future they can do something with a character. So I think that'd be very cool. Be an opportunity for other characters we know. I guess Bail Organa, Jimmy Smits, Mon Mothma. Who else?
The Rebel crew. You could literally have Syndulla, everyone. I mean, because they are part of that time period, but also you do see them on Yavin too. So, you hear it here and you see the ghost.
That's true. Yeah. Gosh, I'd love get Vanessa Marshall. I've really hoped I want to see some of these voice actors in costume, in makeup. I want to see Vanessa Marshall on screen with green head tails. I want to see Ashley Eckstein with the orange makeup on, as Ahsoka. I really hope they'll do that. Those would be great to see. It certainly kicks up. It kicks up the possibility of seeing these characters on screen, because that's the right time period. Have they said who's directing it?
No, I think it's just literally just the fact that it's going to be about Cassian Andor and that it's going to be a spy thriller style series. I really think it'd be, I suppose, a little bit like I'm trying to equate it to how they would run that. It would be in a different location every time, I'm guessing, because it would be like Mission Impossible. Like he's given a task he's got to go out and do. So they could really put him anywhere and really use that ability to film anywhere, or or set a group of characters in any planet or whatever or any situation. It's great. The only constant will be him.
Right. Yeah. I think that'd be great. Really keep it fresh. I like that. It's funny. It goes on to something I've been thinking about a lot about today. Is I've been watching the show Young Justice, DC animated show from several years ago, and fans of it have been diehard and been calling for the show to be revived, and finally DC is doing it with their streaming service, and so I've been watching it there on the DC universe, and actually I talk about it on another podcast. But one of the cool things, it's a very well-written show, great story, amazing story. It's by Greg Weisman is one of the creators, who was also one of the original 3 producers on Star Wars Rebels. Also done Gargoyles and but I was just thinking today, how great the show is, because it's 2D and not 3D animated. Because I've realized 3D animation puts a big limit on what you can do with the show, because it's very expensive to make all the 3D models for the characters and the ships and the locations and the creatures and weapons and everything. So that's why you see in 3D animated shows a much more restricted scope in the stories that they tell. It's actually very limiting. Whereas a show like Young Justice, that's all 2D animated, whether they draw location A or location B or C, they still have to hand draw it. And it's the same way, where they can have the character in the same costume or a different costume every scene, but they've still got to draw it. So it doesn't cost them anything to have all that variety. So you see much more variety in the stories, much larger stories, more variety in the locations and the looks of the characters. And I just realized, how much I've been enjoying that with this show, Young Justice. That's so refreshing because the scope is so limited in these 3D animated shows. But so the fact that in Young Justice they can go all over the place, different location every scene, and have all these diverse adventures, I think that brings me back to this idea of a spy show with Cassian Andor. I find very exciting, where they can go to a different planet every show, hopefully, and meet a lot of diverse characters and stuff. I think would be a lot of fun and very refreshing for Star Wars storytelling. So that's exciting. Then I like the character Cassian too. He was a great character.
And really surprising one. I mean, like that, the Rogue One's one of the most surprising films for me. It gave us Scarif and all these Jedha, especially. Completely different environments. I wouldn't be averse to setting I suppose a siege like long 24 style series with the Guardians trying to find their way around, getting away from the Empire, and maybe even throw in a little bit of the rebels that are starting to work their way in. Those that have already set in the city themselves. Might even be new rebel cells, completely separate from what we've seen already. But to have the Guardians in there of the Wills would be interesting. The only problem is, if you did a series like that, there's no way you're going to get a big star, like an international star like Donnie, to just do a TV series, because he's so busy. Very busy man.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to pay for all this, or who they're going to get to do it. But it brings up another interesting question. Is Episode 9 going to be the last Star Wars movie for a while? Are we just going to have Star Wars television for the next few years? And because some things that Kathleen Kennedy and maybe Bob Iger have said lately does seem to suggest that this is the end of movies for a number of years to come. So it sounds like they'll concentrate, because it's a tremendous amount of resources to do these series, especially more than one. So I think that might be the future of Star Wars for a while, and I think that's it's probably good. I think we're probably ready for a change after five more movies.
Oh, definitely.
We've nearly doubled what we had when George sold the company. So it might be time to do another format.
I think so too. And look, it gives a chance for Benioff and Wise and their projects to really get some time to, not rush it, take some time and really, whatever they're doing, give them time to research and come up with what they want them to do. And the same with Rian Johnson. Obviously, he's got his own trilogy, which has been talked about. But again, gives him time to do what he needs to do to make it what he wants to make, and I think rushing things, and I think Bob Iger was the one that said, maybe that wasn't the best thing for the last couple of films, but to give them a bit more time. I mean, JJ is a perfect example of these Star Trek films. they're good because Paramount said, look, you take your time. If you need the extra time. I think they even did that with Force Awakens. Yeah, so...
Yeah. There's some speculation over whether Rian Johnson really is still doing a trilogy or not. I know he confirmed to some random tweeter a little while ago that, he still is working. But Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy have both said things within just the last couple of weeks that suggest that there are no more movies in production. So the question is he doing, pre-production, writing and concept art, is he just going to do that in the background for several years before launching the new trilogy?
Yeah.
A number of years from now, 3, 4, 5 years from now. Or is he actually working on, has it evolved into some kind of a TV project, or is he still working on it? I don't know. I guess then I think they kind of, it's the way they operate now to kind of leave us in the dark until they think we really need to know. So it may remain a bit of a murky mystery for a while.
But that's what's great about the news today with the Cassian Andor thing. I mean, that came not from a random source. That was my update from a Star Wars app itself. Boom! Hey, guess what? We're doing a TV show. I'm like, wow, okay. No one ever even thought that was going to happen, and I kind of like that. They let rumors and stuff of other stuff just fester and blow you out of the water with news like that, like the Mandalorian. I mean, I didn't think anyone saw that coming as well. And, even though it was probably, I suppose, before they released the info, some sites had already figured it out. But still, they're interesting. And it's a great sort of look back to both those sort of series, an adventure series and a spy thriller one. We have had those since the 50s, all the way through the 60s and 70s, all sorts of different stuff. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think with Cassian, he's a really strong character. I love K2SO. He's pretty funny. And I think everybody seems to love Rogue One. There's Last Jedi in some circles is controversial, maybe even The Force Awakens. But I think Last Jedi or Rogue One seems to be universally loved, so it's a really strong choice. So I think it's going to be exciting. I can't wait to find out, who the directors and writers are. And I've been excited about The Mandalorian since they announced Jon Favreau running that. Everything he touches is good.
Oh yeah.
And then when they announced some of the directors, Taika Waititi from New Zealand, who directed Thor Ragnarok and What We Do in the Dark, the vampire show from New Zealand. He's just hilarious. What's that other movie he did? Is it the Wilder People or Wilderness People?
Hunt for the
little
Wilder
kid
People,
with what's his name that they run away into the New Zealand outback. That was
Sam
hilarious.
Neill. Sam Neill's in that one. Yeah. That's a great film.
Yeah, Sam Neill. Yeah, hilarious movie. But so him and Bryce Dallas Howard. And there are one or two other really exciting choices. They're making. They've had some ups and downs with the choices of directors with the new movies, but they seem to be picking really good ones with The Mandalorian. So that'll be exciting, and Dave Filoni involved too. So I could see Dave Filoni having some fingers in this Cassian Andor one, because that's really that's his time period, with Rebels especially, but Ahsoka and Hera creating some of those characters. So we might find that Dave is strongly involved. That would be exciting.
Dave's so good. I mean, the thing is, he is to me, as good a storyteller and myth creator as George. I mean, in some ways, you look back at some of the time when George was guiding him in Clone Wars, he kind of was the great maker's apprentice, when you think about it.
Yeah, it's he's like, I think of Dave as like the next best thing we could have to George, but in some ways, I don't know if I would upset some fans, but in some ways it's almost a little better or as good to have Dave, because what you have with Dave is, basically he studied at the feet of George Lucas for years and worked with him, so he understands George's vision for Star Wars and tries to honor that, but also because Dave is a fan, because he's not George, he can also take the step back from it all with the fan perspective. That George Lucas readily said he never got to enjoy Star Wars as a fan until he sold the company. So he never had that perspective, but Dave Filoni does. So he can see that the larger fan picture as well. So he has that extra added element that George Lucas just couldn't as the original creator. Dave adds that extra little bit of magic.
He really does.
That real authenticity that nobody else is going to have. That level of authenticity as a director producer, as Dave Filoni does.
Without a doubt. And I love that Dave, he always said, I loved growing up watching Robotech. And then I went, whoa, okay, now I kind of get some of what he was doing in Clone Wars or even Rebels, is the fact that he was building up that sort of, I don't know, mythology, but just that continual cliffhanger sort of mentality, which each story had. You wanted to catch the next episode.
Yeah.
And that's what it was like as a kid with Robotech, was the way Carl Macek made that series was the same feel. It's crazy, isn't it? All comes back.
Yeah. Dave was a total geek. I've seen photos of him and his wife Anne in cosplay. I think they went to some of the premieres of the movie. I don't remember, was it Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah.
I think they got in line at the premiere, all decked out. Total geek, totally authentic. And he's had prior to Star Wars some good work experience. He got the Avatar, The Last Airbender, which has a huge cult following. He got that show up off the ground before he came to Clone Wars. He did some other stuff too. I can't remember. Was he? I don't want to say what I think it was in case I'm wrong, but I think he was on smaller roles in another big show. Oh, it was I think it was King of the Hill.
Okay, I didn't know that.
The Fox animated shows. He'd worked on a bunch of other shows that some fans may not be as familiar with.
I do remember seeing that show, but I mean, I definitely knew he was part of Avatar: The Last Airbender. So he's kind of, I suppose, a good precursor to his work on Clone Wars in a long-running series and stuff like that. And I mean, it shows that he can hold not only one story, but a series of stories or threads together to make one massive tapestry. And that's one hell of a storyteller.
For sure.
Oh, it's definitely. Yeah, one of the interesting things too is obviously we've got these coming out too, but one of the lines before we finish up we've got to talk about is the vintage line, which you've expressed, that you're very, interested in seeing where this all goes. One of the great things out here, they've now populated the shelves out here in Australia, believe it or not, more than the regular Hasbro. So I think there was 20 Snokes sitting up on the shelf the other day when I was there in the vintage line. I'm like, okay, well, it's a start. But it's good to see that maybe they're having a little bit more of effect on even the dealers themselves, starting to really go, okay, we've got something here, let's put it up there. And I can't wait to find that Rogue One Imperial tank.
Oh, yeah. And they... Yeah, that's the vehicle vintage collection vehicles are another thing I've told myself I'm not allowed to collect because they are so expensive and the space issue. Yeah. But here a lot of stores have just dropped it on clearance from $80 to started at $80, and now I guess several stores are offering it at $40, which is a much more affordable. It's still kind of pricey, but much more affordable than where it started. But I love the figures, the vintage collection. I recently found the whole next two waves with the Enfys Nest and the Solo figures and the Afra and all of that. I found I lucked out so good. Found the entire two waves on the pegs at my local store, one of each.
Oh, wow.
Well, actually, no, some of them there were two of each. So I bought all of them. And it was the ones that were duplicates were exactly the ones I wanted duplicates, so I could have one on the card and one to open. Yeah. And I'm glad I did because I've never seen any more of those vintage collection figures in any stores anywhere since then. So that's one of the difficulties with those figures. But I think a lot of stores their pegs are still clogged with the Solo figures from last spring and the Last Jedi figures, and even some Rogue One figures. The stores just need to let go and put those on clearance in another aisle so that they can get some new merchandise on the pegs. I hope they'll learn, but the stores never seem to learn their lesson. But yeah, that's the problem. I hope we can move some of those new figures on the pegs. I'd heard a rumor that Hasbro kind of overestimated the interest in Snoke and Kylo Ren on vintage cards. So like as you said, there are an awful lot of Snokes floating around vintage collection and Black Series and the regular 3 1/4 line. A few too many of them, but hopefully we can get past this that first wave and get some of the newer stuff in.
Definitely. Believe it or not, I still have Zuvios on shelves everywhere out here. Here's a guy that was only in the movie Force Awakens for 2.5, maybe 3 seconds in the background. You know, this Constable Zuvio who... Martin Keeler, our YouTube extraordinaire video channel guy for Fantha Tracks, absolutely loves Zuvio. You should see it. He has a room in his house dedicated to Zuvio. He will literally just go and buy up any Zuvio that's sitting on a shelf. He goes anywhere in London, wherever it is. He goes, "Oh, mate, look at that over there. More Zuvio. Okay, I've got it." You know, he'll go over. He'll actually go and buy all the ones off the shelves. I said, you come out to Australia, mate, you're going to need quite a few English pound to actually get all this stuff because they are still on the shelves today. Yeah. Anything that wasn't at Toys R Us is now littering the shelves at Big W's, Kmart's and Targets out here. And, it's crazy. But now he's doing battle with Snoke for Peg Warmer. You know?
Oh, that Zuvio is awful. Fortunately, they in my area they cleared them out. I don't know what they did with them. If there may be there's probably some landfills full of them, like they did with those ET Atari games back in the 80s. I'll bet there will be stories about that. Um, yeah, that was unfortunate because they really banked on that character. Entertainment Weekly, Anthony Bresnikan did an article on him, and I think their storybooks were part of the books devoted to him, and he was going to be the next big thing, I guess.
I suppose at least other characters who had small parts, like in Phantom Menace or a Sing, went off to at least be in other material and given at least a bit more life. At one stage, she was part Jedi. She'd had Jedi training in the Legends verse. And then I think where George took her in Clone Wars was more of a, bounty hunter only sort of thing. But it's interesting. Again, they got more down the line. They got more history. So who knows? Maybe Zuvio it could be in The Mandalorian. Maybe he becomes the, part in that.
Yeah. As much as Zuvio gets criticized, what I did like that Hasbro did for The Force Awakens, which we have not seen since, is they actually made some figures for obscure background characters in that movie, because they made so many different characters that they could. So there's a couple of different characters on Jakku and in Maz's palace, and some of the other characters. But after that, Hasbro's kind of stuck to just the main characters, and I miss the fact that we're not getting droids other than the main one in each movie. We're not really getting much in the way of aliens. It's all just human characters, the main characters in each movie. So I like that Hasbro took a chance on The Force Awakens with some of the characters they chose. And I hope that they won't entirely shy away from that with future things, because that was the fun of the original Kenner figures, was a few of the more obscure ones that they picked, but also in the 90s and the 2000s with it's during that period virtually every character, if they were even on screen for a few seconds, they had an action figure or two. So I miss some of the variety that we used to have.
Without a doubt. Now, before we wrap, is there any projects you'd like to let the listeners know about that you're currently working on, whether it be Star Wars or vice versa?
Sure, yeah. Let's see. The books that are new and in stores now are that's the Marvel Studios Visual Dictionary. And the Marvel Studios 101 books. I don't know if they have it overseas or not, but my Marvel Absolutely Everything You Need to Know book, there's two editions here in the U.S., one with the Hulk on the front and another with Spider-Man on the front. Here, that's exclusive to Barnes & Noble, but I think they might have reprinted those recently because they've become available again. And they're cool because the new animated Spider-Man movie's coming. Those have a unique cover, which is what do you say? It's embossed and beveled. It's kind of puffy and sticks out and all textured. Which is cool. First time they've done that on DK books. And it's got an exclusive poster print inside that you can take out. But then new books coming. I've got in the fall the Marvel Studios Character Encyclopedia. It's just like the Star Wars Character Encyclopedia. It just goes through each page is a different character from the Marvel movies. And that is, I think that's March or April. Very up to date. I think because of the time period that is coming out, it'll have Captain Marvel in it as well. So very up to date. Then I helped out with the upcoming new edition of the Marvel Encyclopedia coming out next spring. And that's this new edition. I think it's the biggest book that DK has ever put out.
Oh, wow.
And it covers Marvel Comics, all the characters and teams. So it is enormous. So that's exciting. That book's been around for a long time. I think 15, 20 years. So there's been half a dozen editions. This is the 2019 edition. I do have a Star Wars one coming out in the next fall, so like a year from now, but I don't know if it's been announced, so I can't say what that is. If any of your listeners are going to be in Michigan for Thanksgiving or Christmas, Thanksgiving, I have a book signing at the movie theater in Gaylord, Michigan, in northern Michigan. And Christmas, I have a book signing at the Petoskey Cinema the weekend before Christmas, signing all my Marvel and Star Wars books. And that's kind of become a holiday tradition to do movie theater book signings. It's great because usually there's a Marvel Studios or a Star Wars movie at Christmas time. The last few years anyway. This year it's all movies that other companies have the rights to. So you've got the animated Spider-Man movie from Sony. And Deadpool has, I guess there's a PG-13 reissue of the movie from Fox, though I guess maybe Disney owns Fox now. So maybe that's technically Disney. I'm not sure if that's finalized yet, but other great movies coming out, Aquaman and Bumblebee and Mary Poppins and stuff, so it'd be good.
It's going to be a busy summer, I think, for a busy winter for you guys when it comes to film too. I think it's always an interesting time of the year, and then we've got, I think it's next year, the first of the, or it might be the year after, Christmas is going to be busy every year with James Cameron's Avatar films. I think the first one's called Way of Water or something like that. So, yeah, they're going to be knocking those out pretty quickly. I mean, I think that's one of the things he's done all these together because he's not worried about whether one goes out. Let's see if it's successful. He knows that's still, or was it the second biggest, or maybe the biggest money earner of all time, or whatever it was when it came out. So it's whatever record it broke, it's pretty much guaranteed whatever these films are going to be, with the continuation. I mean, he's doing about, 5 of them, I think, all up, something like that. So it's, we're going to have some busy Decembers.
The Avatar is an interesting thing because it was such a revolutionary movie, took the world by storm, and did so well, and then we just haven't over here in the U.S. We just nothing after that.
Yeah.
They had the new Disney park, which I've heard is amazing. Everyone I've known that's been to it really, says it's like nothing they've ever seen. But there just isn't that buzz over here in the U.S. I think because Star Wars took that over. So it'll be interesting to see is it met over here in the U.S. with the same excitement that it was. I know it did incredibly well, worldwide. When I was living in Asia when it came out, and it was huge over there in China and Southeast Asia. It was the biggest thing ever. So I think it'll do well either way.
Without a doubt. I think, it was such a fresh thing for the time. Out here in Australia, I mean, the merch even went pretty well out here. So, I mean, it's a cross between that technology that was used and just that we're seeing just brand new science fiction at the time that really got people interested. But before we wrap, how can people catch you up online if they want to follow your work?
Sure. The best place to find me is at author Adam Bray. It's the same address for Twitter and Facebook. My website is down at the moment just because I'm changing over servers and everything and haven't had time to get that all switched. But hopefully that'll be up again in the near future, though I haven't updated it in ages. But maybe this is a good excuse to do that now.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show today, Adam, and I want to thank all you listeners out there for chiming in on the episode. And I hope you go and check out all the great work that Adam's doing because, again, it's going to enrich your experience as fans. So thank you so much, Adam. Well, that's all we have time for here today on the podcast. But we'll be back in the next fortnight with much, much more. We also have Force Materials co-host. This is Australian Star Wars podcast. We have both Rowan and, of course, Baz coming on the show to chat about their thoughts on Star Wars and tell us about their amazing show. We also have some Star Wars role-playing news coming your way and, of course, going to be chatting to somebody from an amazing podcast called the Dice Pool Podcast. His name's Ian, and, of course, he's a Star Wars fan from Australia. That's right, this is Fantha from Down Under. Please make sure you go and check out and subscribe to the shows. Also, if you're on iTunes, why not leave a review? Tell us what you love about the show and what you love about Fantha Tracks. I'm Adam O'Brien. We'll catch you next time. May the Force be with you.